We are hounded by information that comes at us from pretty much every available source, from our laptops, from our computers, from advertisements, even from our friends. So, how do we know if this information that we receive is accurate and reliable? So, as a journalist, a journalist is someone who goes out and finds reliable information. They're supposed to go out and be the one that's supposed to find the most accurate information and report it to the general public. But as a journalist, it doesn't mean that you're the only one that's supposed to do that. As a responsible and informed citizen, you're supposed to be the one that's researching. So, today I want to inform you about the 5 qualities of a journalist that are can be most utilized by anyone who wants to make an informed decision. So, my name is Alex Millage, and I've also served as a student journalist for about 2 years. I worked as a student journalist at my high school newspaper, running sports, news, information, and opinion. And I also worked a semester here at Fulton College for the Hornet. And today I also want to talk to you about the 5 skills that can be utilized by that is most utilized by a journalist. But I'm also going to give some familiar situations about how we can utilize that aspect. And the 5 qualities that are most utilized by a journalist is to be knowledgeable, open-minded, skeptical, persistent, and fair. Alright, so we have an upcoming election in November, very important election, a presidential election, and there's also a lot of ballot measures that can affect the state tax-wise and affect education. And sometimes as students, we do not quite know all the facts about the situation, so sometimes we just look at a ballot and be like, okay, just read what's on the ballot. Oh, raise taxes, increase education. Okay, check it off. But to be knowledgeable, it means that we have to have both sides of we have to be thoroughly researched, and be thoroughly researched. We have to understand both sides, the yes and no of the situation, and understanding the facts. The facts are most reliable, where the facts come from, what source. You always have to evaluate where the source comes from. And so, being knowledgeable also means that we are not making a hasty decision about, just checking out boxes, or that we're utilizing the information and we're being the most knowledgeable to make the most informed decision. So, there's many times, we have to when we have to speak to others of cultural differences, and that's be more open-minded. We might have friends that are very, might have different religious views than us, say being a Buddhist or anything, or just any, random religion. But when we speak to others in a certain setting, like maybe in a party, we have to be open-minded to, their religious, with their religious beliefs, so that we won't step on them, we won't offend them in any way. Sometimes we have to understand that we can joke around with that, but that's just being open-minded. So, and also being open-minded, we have to be open-minded in our relationships with other people. We have to understand where people are coming from and to consider them in their opinion. So, job interviews. He's probably the best example of being persistent. He's always doing his work. And so being persistent, it's not only just doing your work, it's by being persistent in, whatever you do, being diligent, being in your work ethic, having job duties, being responsible. We have to be being persistent to not only to seek information, but to go after and to get the best information, and find the best sources. And also giving everyone a fair opinion. We have a lot of people in our lives, that might, there's many different opinions and stuff. And so we have to hear both sides of an argument. We have to be fair in decision making. And it's very important in our relationships to be fair. So, all right.
Robert, what did you think?
It started off really well. I liked the introduction. You did a really good job of like having your speech like relate to us, and it was really well structured. The specific purpose statement was really clear. The big thing was just ending the speech. There just wasn't like any real conclusion. That's basically it.
Okay. Well, let me start with that point because I think you're right on that. It feels like we kind of hit a wall and boom, we're done. And you've got to summarize for us a little bit. Tell us what it was we were supposed to get out of this, and find a graceful ending to the presentation. And it just felt like you bailed. You got to a particular point. I'm done, and you sat down, and it doesn't feel complete as a consequence. I liked the opening. I thought that you had a nice dramatic statement. I thought you had a transition to a rhetorical question that worked pretty well. The topics identified okay, although you do use the word inform, which I told people not to use in their purpose statement, but you did it, and so. But it was still clear generally what you're going to talk about. I also like the personal justification that you had for talking about this, your own experience, and why this is something that was important for you to discuss. There's a relatively good preview. It's a little quick, but you list the skills that you're talking about. Now, once you get to those skills, each one, you basically describe what the skill is from your perspective, but there's not much development of those particular skills. I didn't hear any examples. On the fairness issue, for instance, when you're talking about politics, people are often pointing their fingers at one side or the other and saying they're not being fair in the way they present this information. You should have some examples of that, some illustrations about how somebody could be fair in this particular situation. How do they train you to be fair when you are covering a story? Let's suppose that you are even on the sports beat, for instance, for the college paper or the high school paper. There's still a notion of fairness that's got to be put in there. Are you supposed to avoid making evaluative statements about the players on the team? Are you supposed to be not be a cheerleader about those kinds of things? I don't know what you mean without a little bit of context. And I think all of the points need some information like that. They need some research from the field. People write books on journalism, and they talk about the very issues that you're talking about, but you didn't quote any of those people, you don't cite any examples, you don't have any statistical information, there aren't really a lot of illustration. It remains at a very hypothetical level, and as a consequence, I think the speech stays much more superficial than it really sounds like it's going to be. The visuals are mostly used for transitions between the points. We know we're going to another point because we're getting another slide, and sometimes the pictures have an impact on us recognizing what the subject matter is, but not always. And I think that you got to be a little bit more creative in coming up with some ways in which you can explain those concepts on those particular points. For example, the same sort of thing about being open-minded. Well, the pictures, with the religious groups, the different religious groups, that's okay. But for instance, maybe there is a ballot issue that is not being covered with a great deal of independence or open-mindedness or listening to other points of view. Maybe there's skepticism about what criticisms people have of it. Well, give us an illustration on those points. It just felt, like I said, sort of perfunctory. Look, it's only, and it's